You had the craft system. This is really the first of the ones where really what we now call as the guilds, which is formed mostly in Europe. And then you had the putting out system, which is really very similar to what probably Tirupur does, which is really give the materials and buy back a finished product. And this was changed by when the machine tools came, and this is the third phase of manufacturing that we see. And the fourth phase was really the Americans introduced the mass production, standardized components, and all of that. But the interesting thing is, even in 1830, they said that we need to take the skill out of the human being and put the skill on the tool, which is very interesting that 200 years later, we still are talking the same. That means in 1820 or 1830, they said we have to take the skill out of the individual and put it in the system. So then we had the Taylor system, which is really all that Frederick Winslow Taylor, where he was going around with a stopwatch behind everyone, introduced scientific management, and switch on light, productivity goes up, switch it off, productivity goes up. All that kind of science of managing people, human resources came. And then we had the numerical control system, which Coimbatore is famous for. We had the computer numerical control system where we were able to do multiple operations. Then we had the flexible manufacturing system. So we are in the 8th stage now, and I think this 8th stage is going to be very different because we're going to stop subtracting. Okay, I think that's really the big shift. I think all through this 500 years of manufacturing, we've been subtracting. Take a big stock, grind it, cut it, drill it, shape it, remove material. I think in about 20 years, people will look at that as it must have been an antediluvian thing to do. Family has been owning this for the last 30 years. So therefore, and they have gone through every stage of manufacturing innovation, and it's a beautiful case study. I think for those who are interested in this, it's an incredible change, and every single manufacturing change, those 7 changes, have really brought. And I suppose the next one, maybe the Beretta will not be available, because the internet would tell you how to make a gun using a small, MaxBot or whatever it is. So I don't know whether Beretta will survive this next evolution, but it's really a remarkable amount, the number of people, the productivity, the number of times things have changed. And we're really talking about 10,000 times more over the 5 years. So I think we've been seeing mass, we talked about automation, we talked about mass production. What really next? I think that's really the question that all of us are asking. I think 1918, I think, car buyers could buy anything. That's really what Henry Ford's famous statement, so long as it is black. I don't think that's really what you want today. And probably what you want is this. I think that's really what you want. And I think that's really represents the consumer needs have changed. The era of mass production is changing. And it's very important because this is really where small and medium enterprises have a huge opportunity. Because historically, it's always been scale up. The model of manufacturing has always been scale up, vertically integrated, have very large plants which reduce the fixed costs. And I think I represent some of those dinosaurs in some sense. But I think the future, at least 20, 30 years from now, it will be scale out. It will be distributed manufacturing. Now that's where really we have some advantage. But not if we continue to buy $20 billion of gold in 4 months. Is that the statistics? Oh, that is. No wonder I'm bleeding in my forex currency. I think we should ask, we have the HSBC guy here going to talk to us about forex, right? You're going to talk about it. So you tell us, how do we get our men and women not to buy? Okay. I think one of the things which India has adapted beautifully is to manufacturing process innovation. I think we wholesale bought the Japanese system, JIT, SMED, Lean, Agile, single piece flow. We know everything. I know that we know everything because every single 2-year-old engineer who applies to my company says he has done all of that. And in fact, every time I read a resume from an engineer who has spent 2 years in any manufacturing, I actually get to know about the latest techniques and technologies because it is there in the resume. Maybe Wikipedia is the source, but whatever it is. But that's really the thing. But you know, these are getting us somewhere, these are getting us incrementally. And I think today there are really disruptive technologies which are just around the corner. And I think in these disruptive technologies, if we are not ready, we could be left behind, but we still have an opportunity. Just like, you know, we never had a telephone, but we leaped into the mobile era. But now, after 15 years of the glorious mobile era, we're just again back into a messy situation because we just don't know how to sort out that mess that we created for ourselves. So we are really missing the web today. So the mobile web is really missing in our thing, because even though we cheaped. So there's a possibility for us to leap. So what are the next paradigm shift, and what are the disruptive technologies? So I'm going to use the latest report which McKinsey Global Institute has talked about, were 12 disruptive technologies. I like McKinsey, but I hope there are not too many women, but they screwed India manufacturing. Because in 2004, McKinsey came out with an absolutely brilliant report, which even now a lot of bright Indian manufacturing people quote. They said very simply, China is very good for low value, low cost, high mass, large things. They can do toys very well, they can do this very well. Whereas India, our glorious India, is superbly equipped to do complex, right, very highly integrated manufacturing. I mean, it's actually a nice thing to say, because I've used that report also in many meetings between 2004 and 2006. Then I realized the irony of it, because we are actually not that good as we think. And that was the time when, you remember, the auto component industry, we are talking about $20 billion of exports. I think you are in the auto component industry. ACMA came up with that ACMA McKinsey study. It was brilliant. We showed, you know, where our productivities are very strong and things like that. But in the last 8 years, China has blown us to smithereens in terms of technology, in terms of the rapid advancement. In 2005, there was not a single photovoltaic cell maker in China. 2012, the top 20, 18 are from China. All of them are bleeding, all of them are making EBITDA losses, but they're all Chinese. So that's really the change. And I think these disruptive technologies we really have to catch. And there are, you know all of that. I think my concern in that is there are a few which are relevant for us. I'm sad to say that while we are the tool room boys for the IT for the world, but we are just not there in the web. A mobile internet, which is making a revolution in many parts of the world, we are at a distance. So therefore, this is one thing which you have to look at. The few things which are very important in this, I'm going to just talk about these four. I think the future is going to be not the kind of manufacturing that we see. We have to look at the Internet of Things, because every single one of those is going to be enabled. Sensors are going to drive many things, and today we are already seeing the beginning of all of that. I think Google is beginning to talk about, you know, you have cars now which are driving in California without drivers, and you have the Google Glass, which is going to be advanced. It was supposed to come in 2014, it's coming in 2013. And huge advancement in robotics. I think there is massive advancement in robotics. Robotics have been there for the last 50 years. But I think the change today is dramatic. And I think today you will see robots for as low as $20,000. And they do things which are unheard of. Okay. The other one is the 3D printing. I think the 3D printing is really driving dramatically. I want to know, in this, how many of you have a 3D printer prototype in this city? How many are there? Are there any? This is the workshop for India. Are there any? PSG has two. I think the institute has two. I think it's driving change so dramatically, and if you don't play around with that today, we're not going to be good at it in the future. Okay? And then of course nanomaterials, advanced materials which are really making a change. Okay. So there's going to be a whole new manufacturing ecosystem, and I think this is really where the opportunity for Coimbatore and clusters like that, because there is going to be such a disruptive force, we really have to retool ourselves. And I think in that, can we do the same that we did in the telecom leap? And then of course a bit of a slump, but a telecom leap, can we really do that? That's really what the manufacturing has to do. So first thing is, I think goodbye in 10 or 15 years to subtractive manufacturing. It's going to be really additive manufacturing. I don't think we're going to see the same that we've been doing for the last 500 years. I think it's going to be very different. I think these nanomaterials, carbon fibers, I have no idea as to how many companies in this cluster are really playing around with nanomaterials or carbon fibers, but this is really driving quite a lot. I'm sure there are some high-tech companies. 3D processors I talked about. I think the robots are becoming dexterous. I do not think that in the future we will see manufacturing the way we are seeing today. I mean, it is going to be, just look at it. If you're going to have a Baxter robo for 10 to 12 lakhs, and if it's going to give you a lot of comfort, I'm sure that there's not going to be, in the past we used to have to spend 2 or 3 crores. Today, a good robo from a Fanuc or something like that, or some of the people are here, is 40 or 50 lakhs from Siemens, and at 10 or 20 lakhs you have these smaller robos which can do many things. It's going to make a very big difference. We really have to absolutely do something to deeply understand and how to integrate it. Not to be able to do some little bit of instrumentation and controls for it, but deeply understand and embed it in our manufacturing. Okay. And of course, online services. I think this is going to make a difference, because today, if you look at Innocentive, Innocentive has got 500,000 engineers solving problems, solving real engineering problems. What is ironical is Innocentive has the lowest number of users from India. That means we are not posing engineering problems to experts, and we are not getting the whole global experts to solve the problem. So therefore, this is something which you have to learn, how to use the web, how to source solutions which we don't have, but it's out there. That's what the World Wide Web has done. It's really brought expertise at your fingertip, but you have to really go for it. I mean, if you don't, if you're still, an analog kind of a situation in our IT services, I don't think we are going to make a big difference. Okay, this is the thing, and I just want to do that. We were thinking additive manufacturing has not reached China deeply, and so very wrong we were. And the one on the side is a fuselage. 5 of them take care of the fuselage. It's for the advanced fighter jet. The other component is a 5-meter long component for the jet fighter. It's a wingspan, and both these products are made by the world's largest digital printer, and that is not in US, that's not in Netherlands, which is the mother of the printing, but that's in China. Okay, so I think we really have to but we still have chance to do this. Okay, and this is the purple and the red ones. This is the Citroën GT concept car. 50% of its products are made by additive manufacturing, not subtractive manufacturing, as we all know. This is the Baxter Robo, 12 lakhs. I think it looks pretty good. It will obey all your commands. It will work for 12 hours. Unless, of course, our factories inspectorate says that anything more than 8 hours, we will cut off the power to it, or if it moves more than 48 hours a week, we will have to charge you and we'll imprison you because you're the managing director. I hope those things will not be applicable, but don't be so sure about it. I'm sure somebody is thinking of all of that, because how can we, abuse robots, because at some point in time they may become like human beings. This is the company which has made an admirable entry into the high-tech electric cars, but we're talking about electric cars that are, have a 300 kilometers range and that drive at 200 kilometers, not the electric cars, not the hybrids of Prius and other things. So the Tesla, this is the Tesla factory. Okay, there is skilled work, super skilled work, but there are no workers. This is really not too far. This is reality today. And so I think really this is where the advantage for us, as manufacturing is digitized dramatically, it's going to make humongous sense for smaller enterprises. I think flexibility will be necessary, and that's where I think the innovative spirit that you so much see in the city is going to make a difference. But are we really ready for it? I'm not so sure. Are you all ready for it? You will have to answer. But if you're not, at least I hope that I'll wake you up a little bit. So essentially, it'll be back to the future. We're going to back to the crafts, the guilds era of the 1492, where the whole thing is not going to be like the assembly line. It's going to be more like the old cottage industry. So we're really going back. So it's back to the future, but in a digital way. I've said enough on all of this stuff. I think you can pick up any one of this. If you have spent as little time as I have spent in putting all these ideas together, you will be as good a master on this as I am now. But really, what do we do now? And that is really a big problem for me. Okay? And I have 2 slides. Please challenge me and say this is wrong, because I want it to be wrong, because this is about Coimbatore and its cluster. Please just say it is wrong, and then write to the guy who did the study and say this is wrong, this is outdated. Okay. The first one talks about, we know that it's a foundry motor pump manufacturing cluster. The first one is a famous study which was an Economic and Political Weekly. I don't know whether there was anything. It was 2000. It said that it was underprepared to meet the challenges of liberalization during the 90s. I think it's old story. I think we may have done remarkably differently now. Okay? Slow in new technology adoption, weak interlinkages about firms, lack of innovation, low productivity. These are 4 ideas of the 90s. Pardon me if this is wrong, and I hope it is wrong, because as far as I am concerned, this is flies in the face of anything that I've seen in Coimbatore, so I hope it's wrong. But we have another study. I think at least we can ask him, because he's from our own Tamil Nadu. Actually, the Coimbatore cluster is fantastic in terms of the number of units, but in terms of sales, which means we really are using human beings like whatever it is, and in terms of technical efficiencies, it ranks quite low. So these are 2 studies. I hope they are wrong, and I hope there is a difference in this. Okay, this is about us, and I think for us, for anyone in South, Coimbatore represents the pinnacle of our engineering and manufacturing. If this is the state of our engineering and manufacturing, then we have a problem. So therefore, I park this, I leave it with Dr. Manikam and Mr. Ilango. Please prove this wrong, okay? And that's important. So what do we do? So I have just 4 things. I've just broken it up into 4 areas. We have firms, we have clusters. I saw you have talked about cluster vision, global manufacturing, industry associations, and government. There's nothing new, but we have to get this done.